This is Marco Reus.
This is Shinji Kagawa.
This is Nuri Shahin.
Hello, this is Jadon Sancho.
And you're listening to the Yellowwallpod podcast.
Hello and welcome to episode 362 of the Yellowwallpod. I'm your host Stefan Butzko, and today we will talk about Champions League delight, a 3-2 win away to FC Sevilla, which allows Dortmund fans to dream about the quarterfinal. That game alone would be enough to fill a whole episode, but we have to preview the last Revierderby. For that and more joins me Lars Pollmann. Hello Lars, glad to have you back again so soon after you had me out on the Marco Rose Emergency podcast on Monday. How are you doing?
As always, Stefan, I'm quite tired, which is solely down to the fact that you are located in the US and we are always recording in the witching hour of German time, but nevertheless somewhat excited to talk about Dortmund again.
Yeah, it's 7 after 8 p.m. Lars. I'm sure you will not be falling asleep quite yet. But in order to wake you up a little, I compilated the goals for the Sevilla segment. So here they are.
From Haaland into space here for Dahoud. Goes for goal and finds it. A quite brilliant goal from Mahmoud Dahoud. Haaland, typical forceful run from him. Can he get in there? Oh, you bet he can. That is Erling Haaland all over. A driving run at the heart of the Sevilla defence. And he was on to the return pass in a flash. Defeat in Europe and they're slow in possession there. And it's a 3-on-1 momentarily. And Haaland is in. And that is the inevitable outcome. Erling Haaland on the mark again.
So that was obviously a fun game to watch. At least for me it was. I did not expect Dortmund to be that clinical in front of goal. Lars, what surprised you? What did not surprise you? How did you see the game in general? Where do you want to start by discussing it?
Well, I want to start with the commentator calling him Dahoud, which I think is making things too difficult for himself because it's just Dahoud. But nevertheless, since I wasn't on the preview show, I can confidently say that I saw everything coming and definitely predicted a 3-2 win for Dortmund with a Haaland brace and a Dahoud screamer from distance. I mean, that to me that was fairly obvious, but as some of us aren't so well versed in the prediction game, I will entertain the thought of being surprised, and I would say then if that were the case that I would be surprised with the general switched onness of the team. I mean, they had a lot of they won possession high up the field a lot. They do that in the Bundesliga as well, but typically they don't know what to do with the ball afterwards. And I think we've talked about that in previous episodes in regards to, for example, Jude Bellingham, who wins the ball quite a lot, but oftentimes the immediate action afterwards isn't quite there yet. And against Sevilla, I think they were quite sharp in those instances. I think Terzic made a good call with his midfield selection, obviously being forced into it to an extent with Delaney staying home for the birth of his first child. But, playing three fairly aggressive but also forward-minded midfielders in Emre Can, Bellingham and Dahoud worked really well. And also the idea to play Haaland in a bit different role to usual, to have him run at the very good Sevilla defenders, Koundé and Diego Carlos, with a bit more space. I think that was also quite a good idea, and generally it worked out so well for let's say the 35 or so minutes after conceding and before the halftime break, that was arguably, I would say, the best Dortmund have played under Terzic. I would say that was even better than the second half against Leipzig. But I mean, not to be Debbie Downer, but I think in the second half they were too passive at times. I think substitutions came a bit late, even though I can understand not trusting the guys on the bench too much at this point. And I mean, conceding that easy a goal by Luc de Jong, who does nothing else but lurk at the back post and finish easy chances. I mean, I think Terzic said after the game that de Jong decided the Europa League final against Inter basically that way. And I think that was definitely something that they will have talked about. And I think Emre Can just kind of forgot what he was supposed to do there. So it could have been even better. I think also Dortmund should have had a penalty in the first half when Papu Gomez used his elbow to block a cross from, I suppose, Matteo Morey, might have been Marco Reus even. So,
I think it was Reus.
So all in all, I think, while there were some negative aspects to it, I think when you score 3 away goals, should have had a penalty at a very decent side in Sevilla, not necessarily a great side, but a decent side, who were in a really good run of form, which you will have talked about in the preview show, I suppose. I don't want to be too negative about it. I think, as I said, the 35 minutes from the first conceded goal to the halftime whistle, that was arguably the best they've played in months even.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Terzic himself invoked Leipzig's second half. And I would agree with you. I think this half was a little better also because it happened in the Champions League. And I mean, obviously, it's a little bit vexing that Sevilla, in the form of Suso, I think, scored that opener because it wasn't a really well-placed shot, but Marvin Hitz would have had it covered, had it not been for Mats Hummels' foot that deflected the ball right over the goalkeeper. Obviously, Jadon Sancho can do a little bit better, but I don't think you would expect Suso to take a pump fake, basically, and then, take it with his right, because I think he is left-footed. These things happen. Jose Perez in the preview did allude to Sevilla being very good at switching play, and it was a throw-in situation if I recall correctly, but the ball to Suso sort of was a switch of play, obviously very high up the field, but nevertheless it caught Dortmund out a little bit. Obviously Jadon Sancho can do better, Jude Bellingham can also do better in blocking or deflecting or closing down the shot or the player before he takes a shot. Nevertheless, it was very annoying. However, obviously, big credit to Matthias and me for agreeing, I guess, because he sort of called the 4-3-3 in the preview. He said that this was probably a good idea to play that way, to have a little bit more defensive solidity in midfield with this sort of lineup. And if you think about why, if you think about Dortmund utilizing a 4-3-3, it doesn't happen that often. I don't even know if it happened since Bosch, really. I'm very happy with that, especially with the directness that ensued from that. I think Dortmund looked very sharp in possession in their transition play, and you hardly ever see that. Obviously, that's something also down to the fact that Dortmund played against Sevilla, and they're obviously a possession-based side, and they are sort of set up perfectly for Dortmund to play that way. I mean, Dortmund, I think, had 34% possession in this match. But nevertheless, it's just really nice to see balls being passed forward and vertically through channels in the half spaces again, and Dortmund players receive the ball and then continue with speed. I think just alone in the first half, you had 4 or 5 situations where Dortmund were running with full speed at Sevilla's defenders, and that's something you don't often see in the Bundesliga at all, and something you really desperately miss from Dortmund, because there's a lot of pace in there. And obviously, we have to talk about Erling Haaland again. Also, Lars, when you look at the first goal, I think it was a throw-in that he sort of chested down and then, turned around with the ball in his foot and then found Dahoud. I think it counts as an assist, but overall, a really well-created goal, especially for Champions League night. It's kind of funny that Dahoud, of all people, who usually skies these into row Z, scores. But I thought it was a very, very well taken shot. So, Lars, I would like to highlight a little bit the play of Dahoud before we talk about Haaland, because he has been sort of a bit of the forgotten son, I guess. What did you make of his performance? What stood out to you that he did particularly well? What can he do better, etc.?
Well, first of all, I want to welcome Edin Terzic to our listeners, because clearly he's been listening to our clamoring for a Dahoud start over the last few weeks. I mean, I still don't really understand why he never really got the chance to show himself when every other combination didn't really produce the results that would warrant his being left out. I mean, we've talked about there being a little bit of a, training ground dust up between Dahoud and Terzic, but I mean, if that's resolved to the point that he's on the bench, then it might as well be resolved to the point that he can start games. So I'm just, first of all, I was glad even an hour before the game when the lineup dropped that, Dahoud finally gets the chance to show his considerable qualities, because I think not for naught I've dubbed him Lockdown Iniesta over the last year, because I do think, I mean, obviously that's a bit of an exaggeration, but I do think that for some reason, ever since fans have been disallowed from the stadium, he's been a markedly better midfielder for Dortmund, and I don't really understand what he does wrong in terms of training performances or whatever. I don't understand why he doesn't get the chance to show himself more often. I think there was a real opportunity there after he was called up for the German national team for the first time, for him to really take flight at Dortmund as well, given more chances to prove himself, because that must have been such a boost to his morale after 3.5 almost years at Dortmund of, moderate success at best, I would say, even also from a personal perspective of his, even though he seems to be a fairly happy-go-lucky kind of player. So I do think that they kind of missed an opportunity there, and just hope that now he can transform his really good performance against Sevilla into getting more play time. And I do believe, given his form he's showed over the last 12 months or so, and given more opportunities, he will produce good performances, because what you saw against Sevilla might have been a singular incident in terms of scoring a wonder goal, which is not something you should expect from a central midfielder all the time. But you also saw the same qualities that he's shown repeatedly over the last months, and in that he's very calm on the ball. He always presents himself as a passing option. He talks a lot to his teammates, gives a lot of instructions, which, I mean, when German players such as Dahoud, such as Hummels do that, or the goalkeeper, you always praise them for being leaders, but when Dahoud does it, people kind of shrug it off as a guy talking too much. So he, to me, is arguably Dortmund's best combination of aggressiveness in tackling and also ball playing prowess. So I think pairing him with Bellingham and a base six, which usually I guess Delaney would be the better option in that pairing or in that trio than Can, I think, at least against good opposition where you don't expect to have the majority of possession, I think that's a recipe for success. And I'm glad that Terzic came around to seeing that over the last week or so, after giving Dahoud a bit more playing time here and there.
Yeah, I said on the last episode that this is maybe going to be Terzic's biggest game of his life, because we don't know how his coaching career will go on. And I mean, biggest game of his life as a head coach, I mean. And thus far, obviously, he got it right. So kudos to him. For Dahoud, he had the most tackles of the team with 4. Second most is Jude Bellingham. Obviously, he had 1 tackle in the defensive third and 3 in the middle third, but also he had the most pressures, which were 15. Second behind him is Jude Bellingham, and then obviously Marco Reus behind there. And he also had the most successful pressures, meaning 6, so about 40%. FBref.com here tells me. So in those terms, I think what I liked about the Dahoud performance is there was rather complete. Obviously, in the second half, he is also at fault for why Dortmund became a little bit more passive. I think that's especially down to that midfield 3 not finding it as easy anymore. But Sevilla had to come, and Dortmund could have also used a couple of counterattacks a little bit better. I think in the end they gave possession away quite easily, and but we can talk about this in a minute. Just back to Dahoud, what I really liked is that he was pretty much everywhere in the half spaces and in his own half in midfield. He really bossed the midfield like you would expect, and he utilized the space. I think you already talked about Dortmund being more switched on, and I think you could really see that because they were quick on their feet by making decisions in a really quick fashion, and that's something we don't always see, and that's, I guess, for many Dortmund fans very frustrating that Dortmund can on a Champions League night turn it up like that, but then too many times you just don't see it, and you kind of want this more to be the baseline than the ceiling, I guess. But yeah, it's nice. He obviously had this awesome strike. He had a couple of really good moments in midfield where I think had he not retained possession or regained the ball, Sevilla might have had Dortmund caught out. So very important. Obviously, Jude Bellingham, I think, also made had a very good game, and yeah. And for the second goal, obviously, a very quick, rapid attack again, where Dortmund progressed the ball forward, and 1-2 with Sancho then, to fire it home. And the third, of course, the production pretty much of Marco Reus and then the layoff to Haaland. But nevertheless, you still have to finish it like that, where you sort of turn your body a bit to the left, and then I think he finished it with the left foot into the far corner. Nothing that Bono could have done there, the Sevilla goalkeeper, and I think he had another really good chance from a Dortmund counterattack where the Sevilla goalkeeper did make a good save. But yeah, I think you already talked about the role that Haaland had from Terzic, that there was a bit different. I think Terzic at the news conference after the game said it himself, that when Sevilla are in possession, that they are very forward thinking with their center backs, and the skeleton defense, if you will, then is only one defender, and if you have a one-on-one up front, that bodes well for Dortmund. So yeah, obviously he is the talisman for Dortmund because the way he makes his runs, the explosiveness, he binds players, he creates spaces, and obviously he knows how to run and time his runs amazingly well in order to give his teammates a chance to pass the ball to him. I'm just really glad the way this all worked out. It's just super fun to see and to watch, and I think Dortmund fans can be really happy to have a player like him, however long they will be afforded that honor, I guess. Lars, what do you make out of this performance? I think it was the 17th and 18th goal now in his 13th Champions League match in his still very young career.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not even going to get into all the numbers because they're so staggering, and everybody's will have seen them during the game, after the game, on social media and whatever. It is quite remarkable to me that I think Haaland is actually a better player in the Champions League than in the Bundesliga, which I think he talked about after the game about the entire team having perhaps a bit more motivation. I mean, you could get into whether that's a good or a bad sign, but I think he didn't really mean to say too much in that regard. I think it's just for him personally, he's so switched on in the Champions League. It's like when that anthem plays, he gets into another gear. It's a bit like Ronaldo used to do, in my opinion, but Ronaldo obviously always scored in the league as well. And for however great Haaland has been in the Champions League, I think in the Bundesliga this season, and especially in the last few games, he did have a couple of games where he was barely visible, where he missed his only chance against Freiburg and Hoffenheim in the first half. Obviously, he scored against Hoffenheim at the end, but I think he was kind of due, another breakout performance, not in the sense that he was a relatively unknown player and suddenly he's burst on the scene, but in the sense of that how good he is, that whenever he doesn't perform up to his standards, you wonder, when will he get back to the absurdly high level that he's already at 20 years of age. So I'm not surprised that it comes in the Champions League. As I said, he seems more switched on. Perhaps it is more motivation, or maybe defenders of better teams giving him more space. I think he's always, in the few games he's had against Bayern, he also looked good, for example. So maybe he is one of those players that works better against teams that like to have the ball themselves and create themselves. So the only thing that annoys me is that now obviously you have all these people who talk only about when's he gonna leave, where's he gonna go, and you have these BS rumors out of Spain where Real Madrid, who are basically broke and haven't bought a player in I think 2 seasons now, are suddenly going to spend an otherworldly sum for a player that doesn't want to leave, and Dortmund don't want to sell. So I think those people might take some of the enjoyment away from me personally, but I guess that's also my fault for giving them, the rent-free space in my head.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like when he joined, I was mentally prepared for this to happen anytime he scores a goal. I feel like the same is with Jadon Sancho. It's sort of the trade-off you make. Otherwise, as a Dortmund fan, I don't think you come to enjoy players like this, to be honest. And it just comes with the territory.
The thing is, I'm perfectly aware that they're going to leave and whatever, but just the focus of some people
you just want to enjoy
everything about lame ass transfer market stuff. I mean,
looking at you, ESPN FC account.
Yeah, and I mean there are so many people now who want to earn internet brownie points by being the first to point out stuff on the transfer market and all that. I mean, it used to be quite fun to follow for a while and dabble into, having opinions yourself and whatever. But to me, that's like a phase of 2 years ago, and now we could all move on to more productive things.
Yeah, I mean, people who know me know that I absolutely hate transfer rumors and the entire silly season. I can entirely do without it, to be honest. And you really have to poke me to talk about transfers. Something needs to happen, explicit questions or so. Otherwise, that's not my forte. I don't really enjoy it because there's usually enough factual stuff going on that you can talk about. So yeah, the first half obviously very interesting in the sense, and Lars, I think what I also liked about the setup is that Marco Reus was a bit more on the wings, and I don't think that there was such a negative effect, especially because he helped a little bit Matteo Meret on the right side when he was playing there. I mean, him and Sancho, just like Bellingham and Dahoud, they switched sides a lot. But obviously seeing him create and steal the ball of, I think it was Papu Gomez in the 42nd or 43rd minute, and then have this straight run toward goal. That's vintage Marco Reus, and I think it's nice to see. Obviously, the one thing I would say is that we can obviously expect this of Marco Reus in a game like that. But the thing is, I don't think he has the legs anymore to do this week in and week out. So I feel like you need to rest Marco Reus a little bit more often, and then have him have these, as you say, breakout moments maybe where he can perform. So I think it was smart to rest him at the Hoffenheim game. I don't know if that was made with the Sevilla game in mind or not. But either way, very important player in a high profile game like that, because he, as you alluded to on Twitter, I think makes a lot of smart runs, a lot of pressing runs off the ball. So really helps the team in that regard. And, Dortmund really had a lot of compactness in this game. So that's really something. Now, Lars, let's switch over to the second half, which obviously didn't end the way Dortmund imagined. However, Sevilla, for the most part, I think bossed the second half and had a lot of the ball. However, I don't really recall any big chances out of open play that they had where Marvin had to make saves, like, say, against Bebu in the Hoffenheim match. The only real danger really ensued from free kicks. I think Sevilla hit the post once and then it sort of hit the glove of Hitz but stayed out, which was a bit lucky. And then obviously the set piece at the very end. What do you make of Dortmund being obviously very passive, very low block for most of the game in the second half, but not allowing and giving away too many things?
I mean, I don't think they were passive throughout the second half, even when defending in a low block. I think they definitely had some moments in the first, 15 or 20 minutes of the second half where they just invited Sevilla to circulate the ball in non-dangerous areas. It was almost a Favre special defensive performance where, the opponent doesn't get into areas from where you would expect high scoring opportunities to come from. So I think they wanted to invite Sevilla to open up more spaces even and have some counter attacks. I don't necessarily remember too many of those coming off. I think that Sancho had the chance after his solo run, but that was a bit later in the game. I'm not entirely sure. But then I think Sevilla brought on fresh legs. I mean, Lopetegui made one sub at halftime and then a triple sub and another sub late in the game. And so they had 8 fresh legs, if you like, when Dortmund hadn't brought on 2. So it's only natural that with the quality Sevilla have on the pitch, you will suffer a bit. And as you said, they didn't really let Sevilla make any inroads in terms of scoring opportunities from open play. So I think that's obviously a good thing and a good sign that for the most part they were defending with concentration. I think there were a couple of moments from Akanji and Emre-Can where they weren't necessarily paying too much attention to their surroundings. I think especially that Akanji moment could have been a bit problematic. Didn't come off. So at the end of the day, I think when you consider that Sevilla were the home side and you had a 2-goal advantage, I can understand that you want to drop deeper, invite them, don't spend too many energies in a grueling season. So I mean, would I have liked perhaps an earlier sub to counter that a bit more? Yes, but as I said in the beginning, I don't necessarily know that I would have trusted any one of the guys on the bench to have a positive impact on the game, to be honest. I mean, everybody knows how much I like Julian Brandt, but at the moment he is more of a risk than someone who adds something to the game. And then you have all these kids, and ultimately he made the changes, Terzic made the changes he needed to make with Guerrero and Reus having dead legs. I think especially Guerrero suffered quite a bit. So ultimately, conceding that dumb set piece where Can and he wasn't even ball watching. It almost looked like I think Stefan Özfeld said that it looked like he met someone in the stands.
Yeah.
But you can concede that or concede a direct free kick. So it doesn't really matter. One of these was going in, so might as well be not be coming off the back of Marvin hits his glove or whatever. So ultimately, I think the narrower scoreline was deserved for Sevilla and still a fantastic result for Dortmund, because whenever you come back home for the return leg and you can actually have two different defeats and still come through being a 1-0 defeat and a 2-1 defeat, I mean, there's not too much to be overly critical of.
No, that's entirely true. I mean, the first attempt that Sevilla had in the second half was Sergio Escudero in the 64th minute, and that shot was blocked. And then the next one was in the 74th by Rodriguez Anais, who then hit the woodwork. I think it was from 26 yards out or so. And then obviously you had the Luc de Jong goal in the 84th, and then Rodriguez again in the 87th or so with it was another free kick, I think, attempt, a direct one from 28 yards. So, but that was just, I don't know, that the ball just swerved completely away, and then you had another one from Diego Carlos in stoppage time, which hit saved, which also wasn't really much of a test. So all these things considered, yes, conceding the set piece is obviously super annoying, and especially that Can dropped the I don't know, he's inexplicably stopped his run. I think had he just kept sprinting toward where De Jong was heading, I think he at least could have defended it. Do you think that this is a ball where Hitz needs to come out and save it, since it was in the air for quite a long time? I mean, for non-Dortmund goalkeepers, maybe, but I mean, what have we come to expect with Burki and Hitz? It almost seems like it's a coaching point they make not to rush out of goal to claim these balls. So I would almost give Hitz the benefit of the doubt in this one. But generally speaking, I would like Dortmund to have a goalkeeper who can come and claim that. All right, fair enough. So for the second leg, how confident are you that Dortmund are progressing, maybe percentage-wise?
51%.
All right, I'll take it. I'm giving them 64%. So I think I mean we don't really know what the setting of this game will be, if it's in Dortmund, if it's somewhere else.
We don't know that the game is going to take place.
Exactly.
To be fair, so.
So anyway, Lars, it's time now for the Schalke segment. Haven't had it in quite a while, but it is time for the last Revierderby on Saturday, 6:30 p.m. kickoff local time. And it's going to be a very interesting one, because I feel like a lot of Dortmund fans were, especially before the Sevilla game, rather pessimistic, because Schalke right now are obviously last in the table with their 9 meek points that they have. And Dortmund have previously shown that they can not win against the last place team, I think. Wasn't it Mainz? So, yeah. It's obviously an interesting game, because it is a derby, but also because I really want to see how Dortmund react, quote unquote, after the probably straining match in Sevilla, and probably also didn't help that they could only fly home today on Thursday instead of last night because of a delay. So, Lars, what can Dortmund expect? And first of all, before anything else, do you think that Terzic should stick with the 3 midfield thing to have these aggressive guys in there, which I personally probably would, because it's a derby and you need that sort of thing. But what do you think?
I do believe that they are going to have much more possession against Schalke. So given that this was presumably a tactical wrinkle for a game in which they weren't going to have the ball too much. I think it's probably unlikely that they're sticking with it unless he just thinks that can also work in other circumstances. I'm a bit weary to predict things before the press conference, especially this time around, because as I said earlier, Guerrero and Reus looked pretty dead on their legs, and Emre Can had, I think, a cramp late in the game. Might have been, a more severe muscular issue. We don't really know that at this point. So I would assume that Delaney is going to come into the team, and he should be highly motivated, obviously, with the birth of his child, and he's always playing fantastically well in the Revierderby. I think he's arguably been Dortmund's star performer over the whole of the last, 4 or 5 derbies, even if obviously Haaland has scored a fair few goals, and Guerrero has been involved in a lot of goals as well, but I do think that Delaney's going to come in no matter what, and then you kind of presumably have to figure things out going from there, given the physical state of the players. But what can Dortmund expect? I think it might be cliche, but it makes sense, especially given the circumstances of Schalke, for Schalke to kind of treat this as a cup game. I think there's been a lot of talk around Schalke this week that this isn't their last chance and whatever, but I do believe it's kind of last chance saloon if they want to have the turnaround they need, which is basically they need a series of 4 to 7 or so wins to get out of the absolute deep rough. They kind of need the spark that a derby win in this situation would give them, so I definitely expect them to come flying into every tackle, for Kolasinac to be booked within 15 minutes or so, just to set the tone or whatever. I'll be interested to see who's the referee and if he's prepared to let them have at it, or if he's going to protect attacking players, which I think would definitely benefit Dortmund, because Schalke don't really have any attacking players that need protection. And then, I think the old adage, when it comes to the derby, you can throw the form out of the window, table out of the window. This is 90 minutes of a team fighting for survival, and a team that has shown that sometimes they will when the opponent fights them too hard. So I think the win at Sevilla definitely helps, but if they get complacent, I do believe they might be in for a rough awakening, because I do agree with what, for example, Michael Zorc said, that Schalke, while obviously in a horrendous situation in Bundesliga, since Christian Groß has taken over for Hüb Stevens in January, and Manuel Baum before then, they do have become more solid. And I mean, it's a very small success for them, but hey, he has not lost 3 of his 9 games, which is an improvement, believe it or not, over the guys in charge before him. So I do believe that Schalke are, probably no team since Tasmania Berlin has been as bad as the table has made it seem, when being so far behind the rest of the league.
Yeah, they will obviously be without their star striker Klaas-Jan Huntelaar.
He's played 10 minutes so far this season, so
yeah, I'm just laughing. But yeah, no, I assume Matthew Hoppe will play, who had a couple of goals for them so far. He's not entirely crap, so I guess they've Suazeda, Bentaleb, Stambouli. That's sort of what I expect in their midfield. Kolasinac, I think, is their left back, right? And Mustafi has also joined Schalke since. Haven't really seen him play yet, because right now I don't feel like I need to watch Schalke. So it's going to be, as often more up to Dortmund whether they are in the mood, quote unquote, to play this derby like a derby. And I think this too often in the past has been the downfall for Dortmund, that they either weren't switched on enough, like they were, for example, in Sevilla, or Schalke got a little lucky in the sense that Dortmund created a million chances, but for some reason, and Schalke goalkeeping couldn't finish. I'm very intrigued to find out how this will go. Also, you've talked about players being fatigued. I'm pretty sure that will be the case. Do you think that Meunier is already fit enough to start? Maybe Torgan Hazard will be available. I don't think from the start, but maybe off the bench. Do you think that maybe Gio Reyna will rotate back in? What's about Julian Brandt? These are the questions that I have. Obviously, I would, if it were me, I'd probably give Hummels a rest or Akanji, probably both. But with Zagadou still probably also being out, I also don't see that happening. So in that regard, do you see any changes to the lineup that do you feel are necessary in order to have fresh enough legs against the Schalke team?
I mean, as I said, I don't know about how the players reacted to the strain at Sevilla. I think it would behoove Terzic to make as few changes as possible in terms of not giving players an excuse for letting drop the intensity levels or whatever from the Sevilla game. So everybody who played there and played well should be on enough of an emotional high to ride the wave against the last place Bundesliga side as well. But I mean, you can basically expect a couple of changes after a midweek fixture against a strong opponent, and as you alluded to earlier, also the flight trouble getting back home. It's not necessarily a huge deal, but disruption in like recovery programs is always a bit problematic. So I would definitely not be surprised with a couple of changes here and there. I think Meunier makes sense in terms of they don't really seem to trust Moret to play too many minutes. And seeing as he came off the bench against Sevilla, he would presumably be able to go at least 60 minutes on Saturday evening. So there are enough candidates. Let's just wait and see. I do believe that it would be nice to see Hazard again, but after rushing him on against Eintracht Braunschweig for no reason in the Cup in December and having him re-aggravate an injury, I think they are going to play it fairly safe with him. And I mean, it's not like Dortmund don't have enough important games coming up that they would sacrifice everything for a Revierderby.
Yeah. It's definitely a weird game, I feel like, because Dortmund have a couple of tired legs and Schalke are fighting for their lives, and I'm not entirely sure how that derby itself will play out in the heads of the players, how it will impact sort of the psychological factor, because obviously for Schalke players this can also have a detrimental effect, because there's not only the pressure of sort of fighting for your life, but also the pressure of having to win a Revierderby game, and a team that had so many setbacks, this can obviously also lead to yet another implosion. The few times I've seen Schalke this season, I wouldn't say that they were a very stable side. Obviously, they are also very susceptible to set pieces, so this is something to keep an eye on, that not only Dortmund will concede some, but maybe Schalke as well. Obviously, this will be a game where Dortmund will have tremendous amounts of possession in Schalke's half, and it's going to be very much an opposite, I almost think, to the Sevilla match. So creating something out of your own possession against a deep-lying opponent that's probably just trying to win free kicks and corner kicks and rush forward whenever they can. It's key that Dortmund don't concede too many corners, but also do risk a couple of passes, through balls, etc. So Dortmund will have to play smart, but I feel like the Schalke opponent doesn't suit them as well as Sevilla, if that makes sense, because that was a game where they could actually sit back a little and wait for transition moments. I don't think that Dortmund will have too many attacking transition moments. So, that's maybe one reason I would rather see Meunier, because I think Dortmund will blast a million crosses into the box, which is not a very effective method to score, but at least his crosses are, hit a little harder. So while I'm not really looking forward to Dortmund playing against Schalke, because right now when they are task to make the play. It's usually not pretty. It's rather frustrating. It's often stale, and you have not many ideas. So I also really hope that Dahoud plays maybe alongside Delaney and gets stuck in a little and maybe creates a couple of transition moments here and there. Obviously, a lot will ride on whether Dortmund can score the go-ahead goal or not. I think if that happens, especially early on, while obviously Schalke do have, they can muster a challenge in a power play, if you will, but I think if Dortmund get lucky in this game and have a little luck with the run of play, they can absolutely blow Schalke apart again. I think the last wins were 4-0 and a 3-0, if I have this right. So, Lars, do you think something similar will happen again?
I think there's a reasonable enough chance that it's going to be again one of these games, just because the gulf in quality is quite stark. Even though I think in terms of individual quality, Schalke definitely aren't the worst side in the league. I think they've just been in this rut of form where nothing works and then basically everything becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And I mean, when we look back at this Schalke season in a few years and look back at who was in the squad, you will scratch your head a bit and wonder why they were relegated when perhaps Bielefeld aren't or Mainz aren't. Someone's going to save themselves from down there, presumably. So there's always the chance that the special circumstances of a Revierderby flip the switch in enough heads of Schalke players for them to get their act together. And I do believe that they've shown, especially in their 4-0 win, I think, over Hoffenheim, that, if the switch is flipped, then there's still enough quality in that team to, be a bit dangerous. Ultimately, I don't know where Schalke goals would be coming from. I think Matthew Hoppe had his 5.5 minutes in the sun. I think he's already 3 games without a goal now or whatever. So I mean, ultimately, when it's all down to non-quality factors in terms of mindset and how they approach games and how fresh Dortmund's legs are and whatever, that's always a bit of a mystery. But ultimately, when in doubt, go with the much higher individual quality and presume that that's going to come through. So I would expect and predict a 3-1 win for Dortmund.
Yeah, that probably would have been also my pick, but I'm going to one-up it then. I'm going to say a 4-1 win for Dortmund. I mean, Schalke have conceded 52 goals this season. They have a goal difference of -32, and they've only scored 15 goals so far in 21 match days. And obviously they have 14 losses and only one teeny tiny win and 6 draws. So I mean, if you look at the table, even a draw, I think, for Schalke will not be enough. They really must win this game. So if it's a draw late in the game, I think they have to go for it even more than Dortmund will. I don't know how this will actually turn out, but in terms of just their existence, I mean, they're 9 points behind Bielefeld, who are right now in 16th place, the first place for you to not get relegated automatically. And obviously Hertha are also in 15th, level on points with Bielefeld. So it's still a long way for Schalke, even if they get a win at any point to really turn around, because you wouldn't expect Bielefeld or Mainz or Hertha, for that matter, to completely go without picking up points. So yeah, this is why I'm dead certain that Schalke will go down, and hence this is the last Revierderby for quite some time. I don't know how long it will take for them to come up again. I mean, just look at Hamburg. It's been 3 years now. So yeah, obviously, quickly I'll mention that Michael Zorc and Dortmund officials in general have said that they wouldn't, they're sort of rooting for Schalke to stay up, except for this game. I don't know how you see it, Lars, but I'm sort of rooting for them to go down. I'm fairly okay with that, to get relegated. I won't miss them for a year or two. I'm totally okay with that. How are you feeling about it?
Well, I think that for the most part, it's commercial reasons that Dortmund want them to stay up. I think the Revierderby and Schalke as a massive club is still quite a draw for the Bundesliga in general, and definitely more of a draw than a promoted side such as Holstein Kiel or Spielvereinigung Greuther Fürth, which is half of the quartet in the second division, which is looking likely to finish in the first three spots. Personally, I always say in these Revierderby episodes that not being from the area, I never got the huge rivalry bug. I mean, I know a few Schalke fans in my larger social radius, and I'm on friendly terms with all of them. So I don't have anything naturally against Schalke, such as local people from Dortmund might have from, childhood days or whatever. So to me, it's all the same, them staying up and dropping down. I think they definitely deserve to drop down for the bad work they've done over the last few years. And personally, to me, as someone who for work has to watch a lot of second division stuff and write about second division stuff, it would be, I guess, fun or more fun to have Schalke to write about than Waldhof Mannheim, even though they are not going to get promoted from the third division, but that was the first club to come to my mind.
Yeah, the only sad part really is that Schalke fans won't be in the stadium to be there and present when Schalke do finally make the plunge, drop down to the second division. That's the only sad part, but it's obviously the one thing I'll say to wrap this up is obviously bragging rights are on the line, so this is why Dortmund really must win this, because you can't go 3 or 5 or however long it will take for Schalke to return and not have won the last and final Revierderby. So please, Dortmund players, get it together and fire another hole in Schalke's chest and be the nth nail in their coffin. Anyway, Lars, that should be it for now. It's the third episode already this week, so I don't want to ramble on forever. I'm sure we'll have plenty of things to discuss after this weekend and hopefully a derby win. So in the meantime, please tell our listeners again how to find you on the internet and your work.
Just follow me at Lars Pollmann if you like, and if I deem something worthy of your attention, I will make sure to send a link.
Very nice. You can find me at Stefan Butzko, and you can find all of us at Yellowwallpod on Twitter and Facebook. And obviously, if you want to subscribe to this show, please do that via YouTube, iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Spotify, etc., or your favorite podcatcher app. If you want to contribute financially, go to patreon.com/theyellowwall for more information, or just hit me up on Twitter or drop us an email at yellowwallpod@gmail.com. Also, you can always send us a question via there or YouTube comments. And until the next time, as always, thank you for listening and goodbye.